tremendously.
What new research says coming up. It's now 7:01. News headlines are next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Fired FBI Director James Comey plans to tell the Senate Intelligence Committee tomorrow about the extensive and, in his view, inappropriate one-on-one conversations he had with President Trump. NPR's Nina Totenberg reports the committee posted the draft testimony on its website today.
In the written testimony, Comey details 9 conversations, 3 in person, 6 on the phone, that Trump initiated. In each case, the former FBI director was sufficiently struck by the unusual or inappropriate nature of the conversations that he documented them in a memo immediately afterwards. Comey's statement contrasts the 9 Trump conversations over 4 months with the 2 conversations he had with President Obama over 3 years. One of the Obama conversations was to discuss law enforcement policy issues, Comey said. In the other, Obama summoned him for a brief goodbye in 2016. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump says it's time for the country to do more to improve its aging infrastructure. In a speech in Cincinnati today, the president said it's time to rebuild our country and to put America first. Trump told an audience there he was repeatedly asked as he traveled around the country during the campaign why the U.S. is investing so much in other countries when the U.S. infrastructure is crumbling. President Trump's pick to head up the FBI is drawing praise from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, but as NPR's Joel Rose explains, there are also concerns about his ability to be fully independent in the White House.
Christopher Wray led the criminal division at the Department of Justice under President George W. Bush, where he oversaw some high-profile corporate fraud cases, including the Enron prosecution. The Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman, Republican Chuck Grassley, called Wray a suitable candidate. Democratic Senator Chris Coons, who's also on the Judiciary Committee, says he's encouraged that President Trump intends to nominate a law enforcement veteran. But the ACLU has concerns about Wray's ability to be independent. Wray's law firm, King & Spalding, has done ethics work.
Opposition forces. Back in this country, President Trump renewed his call to commit $1 trillion in the years ahead to overhauling the nation's infrastructure. In Cincinnati, he said he's heard the pleas of voters and the days of rebuilding other countries are over.
We spend trillions and trillions of dollars outside of our nation, but we can't build a road, a highway, a tunnel, a bridge in our own nation. And we watch everything falling into disrepair. It's time to rebuild our country, to bring back our jobs, to restore our dreams.
The president also met with family business owners he said were victims of rising insurance premiums under Obamacare. And he vowed that Republicans will replace it or bust. And on Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 37 points to close at 21,173. The NASDAQ rose 22, and the S&P 500 added 3. We return to the attacks in Iran, the implications and consequences, and the wider picture in a greatly unsettled region. In a moment, William Brangham will speak with experts on those questions. But to begin, Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Margaret Warner reports on today's terror in Tehran that left 13 dead and more than 40 wounded.
It was mid-morning when the first shots echoed from the Iranian parliament building. Gunmen, some reportedly dressed as women, stormed in with rifles and suicide vests. At least one blew himself up outside the parliament.
Problematic here is that instead of the two regional countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia, focusing their resources and working together on fighting a common enemy to both of them, which is ISIS, we are seeing this now escalation in the relation between them, leading both to divert their resources and their attention from the real joint enemy, which is ISIS, and focusing it on waging this fight and this competition between them in different proxy sites around the region.
Kareem, I wonder what you believe the Trump administration's response to all this is going to be.
Well, the Trump administration has gone back to kind of the status quo anti-US policy, which is cooperation with Saudi Arabia and containment of Iran. I oftentimes think that President Trump views this as just simply siding with one team against another, and that's a dangerous recipe in the Middle East.
All right, Kareem Shajapur, Ron Desleen, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
general election. Prime Minister Theresa May of the Conservative Party called the vote in order to boost her authority as Special correspondent Malcolm Brown reports from London.
Along with many young Britons, Steve and Kitty Whitten dream of raising their children in a home
Everybody has the conversation, you know, what are we going to do if something happens?
If something did happen, just having a plan, basically having, so I'll grab one kid, she'll grab the other. For the last couple of weeks after the terrorist attacks in Manchester and London, security has gone up in my own agenda as far as who I'm going to vote for. And I think a lot of people are now looking, all right, well, who's best going to deliver security?
Vigilance, tolerance and remembrance unite these people. They're from Borough Market, where the 3 Islamist terrorists lashed out with knives before being shot dead. The traders have been kept away from their businesses while forensics experts gathered evidence.
So we're going to keep a moment of silence. They're keeping it at the other end of the bridge in St Paul's Cathedral. They know we're here, we know they're there, we're standing in solidarity, the 2 cathedrals and our communities together.
Sir Simon Hughes was the area's Member of Parliament for 32 years. From the Liberal Democrats, the 3rd largest party, he lost his seat to the Labour candidate in 2015. Winning it back would hurt Labour and help Theresa May.
Actually, the public services are at the top of people's agenda. People want us to have the police we need, the nurses we need, the doctors we need. It is now an issue. The security of the country, dealing with the very few people who want to disrupt us, is a major political issue now in this country, and it will be the biggest issue on the desk of the Prime Minister.
The belief that radicalisation and terrorism are fueled by deprivation, social isolation and Britain's military campaigns abroad will guide Jill Rhodes.
There are 2 issues. There are the immediate about how we stop or try and stop more terrorist attacks, and then a bigger picture that is equally important. And for me that means about voting Labour in terms of the approach, changing this world that really goes back to the cuts and the approach of the current government.
Now, would you please welcome the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn's Achilles heel is security, say his critics. They fear Britain's defence would be weakened by a lifelong self-professed pacifist taking control of Britain's Trident nuclear missile system.
We have to, obviously, try to protect ourselves. We would not use it as first use. And if we did use it, millions are going to die. You have to think this thing through.
Close down NATO! This Conservative ad uses Corbyn's past and words to attack him.
I call the cuts, except those in the armed forces.
Our friends from Hezbollah, our friends from Hamas.
I don't think people fear because he said something 30 years ago or appeared with somebody. You know, we've all had our pasts and our histories.
Kate Hoey has been a Labour MP for 28 years, and her seat is under threat because she supported Brexit.
I think Jeremy would know that being Prime Minister, the first duty is to protect the British public. And I think even though he has said things in the past, people grow into a job. And I think I've seen changes in Jeremy. I've known him for a very long time. And even over the last year, I've seen how he's changed in terms of the way he puts his views.
Please welcome the leader of the Conservative Party, the Prime Minister, Theresa May.
When Theresa May called the snap election in April, the Conservatives were 17% ahead of Labour. Her refusal to debate Corbyn helped erode the advantage.
You've called a general election for the good of the Conservative Party and it's going to backfire on you.
No, I called
Comey's friends that he did write down all of this contemporaneously after every one of his meetings or conversations with Trump. We also know he's a gifted storyteller. All of that comes through. And it's really going to be a battle now between the credibility of Comey and the president.
How is the White House responding to all this?
The president's private attorney, Mark Hazowitz, issued a statement today, and as reported by Bloomberg, that statement says the president is pleased that Comey has finally confirmed the president himself is not under investigation. Hazowitz goes on to say the president feels completely and totally vindicated. So what's interesting about this is that the president's lawyer is relying on Comey's credibility, but the outside groups, the super PACs that are blasting Comey in an ad right now, are trying to undermine his credibility and calling him a showboater. So it's a bit of a contradictory message on the eve of Comey's testimony.
So, to set the scene for tomorrow's testimony, we have the fired director of the FBI saying that the president, who fired him, had wanted him to drop the investigation of Michael Flynn, who had been the president's national security advisor.
That's right, and the president on May 18th denied that he did that.
For-profit education ventures see a much bigger role for digital badges.
A degree doesn't say a lot. A badge or a micro-credential can say a lot more.
Ryan Craig is the author of College Disrupted, the Great Unbundling of Higher Education.
The primary credential that we use in our labor market is the degree. That's the sort of default credential. Micro-credentials or badges breaks that down into literally competencies. What micro-credentials are signaling is the shift from degree-based hiring to competency-based hiring.
That's right, LinkedIn. It's not just for top executives, it's for you. And it's the perfect place for you to start your professional story.
Craig points to